thought you said you started off with the intention of, like you said, using it as a soapbox to say what you saw as wrong.
Well, I don't know if it was my intention to use it, but I thought that's what it might have happened. Yeah.
And then it sounds like during the process of writing it, it turns out that you liked industry more than you thought you did.
That's right.
And I guess what were the things you guys intended to say, and then what was it that made you kind of reassess that?
Volume 2, you'll have to wait. I'm not going to get deeply. I'm willing to let the record stand right now. But there are lots of things that can be said about the fight for Canadian content. I took a more romantic point of view of how we approached that, but there was a lot of dirty stuff. And one could spend more time talking about that, and the same with all kinds of things. One can either say, "Aren't we lucky to have this record deal with Columbia Records in New York?" or "Shit, aren't they screwing us on the royalties?" And I just chose to go, "Aren't we lucky to have the deal?" And here's the characters I dealt with, and that just seemed more appealing to me at the time.
Very cool, and it seems to have been the right approach. The reception seems to be very positive. How have you found the reception? Has it surprised you in any way?
I would say I am surprised at how well it's been received. I mean, I don't know that anybody's going to get rich from the book, but it's been largely really, really, really good reviews and good articles. There's been one or two that maybe weren't so favorable, but even they were not really that problematic to me. One person seemed to feel that, I think they were kind of scratching their head as to why I would write a book, that my career wasn't good enough to have written a book. And I sort of think, I'm sorry I don't live up to your standards. But anyway, I said, let's go write about your career and we'll compare.
And you'd said earlier when you started, really started your career in 1964, and also really when you started True North in 69, you say there was nothing you could really call a Canadian music industry at that time. Obviously that's not the case anymore. I'm looking particularly at those in Canada, but a lot of people that come to these sorts of events aren't all artists. They're also people on the business side of things. I guess, is there still opportunities out there? Can you see someone like yourself at like 24, 25 getting into the industry and making a real success of it? Is that still an opportunity? Yeah,
I can. I mean, I think that we're in a period of great change, a lot of chaos. Things are definitely being stood on their head. A lot of old rules are going out the window, and I think that's a great time for a young person to come along, particularly on the entrepreneurial side. When there's a big shakeup, everybody knows about the same of what's going on. So I wouldn't mind being really young and trying to do it again. It wouldn't. I think it's intimidating. But then when I got in the 60s, the same thing was happening. It was a different kind of change, but the big change that was going on then is that the record business was going from middle of the road to this revolution of, the rebirth of rock and roll and of folk rock. And all of the record executives were, like the head of Columbia's A&R was Mitch Miller, AC Records. And yet, all of a sudden there was people knocking on his door like, Bob Dylan and Janis Joplin and stuff. So, for somebody young who had their finger on some of that, and there was many that did, it was an opportunity to do things. And I think the same is true today.
And you said, like yourself, you had the finger kind of on the pulse of what was going on. On the business side, much like the artist side of the business, success rate isn't extremely high. There's no guarantees of anything. I guess what sets those who succeed, like yourself did, what separates those who succeed from those who don't? Or is there a commonality?
Well, I think some of it, I don't want to oversimplify it, but let's not forget that word luck. Mm-hmm. I'm a product of a lot of luck. I think the minute people become successful and they forget that luck played a role in it, that's when I think they start to get in trouble, in my opinion. But you can't quantify those things. If you could, you'd bottle it and everybody would do it. If it wasn't hard, then everybody would do it. So it's really hard. You can't. There's a million ways home. There's whatever works. But some of it's really good old-fashioned boring stuff like work hard, 24/7, be smart, don't take any wooden nickels. And although if you could find a real wooden nickel nail, it'd probably be a good collector's item. So maybe you should take a wooden nickel, actually. And like I say, some luck. There's a good saying, Ahmet Erdogan, the guy that started Atlantic Records, it's one of the greatest labels of all time. He's quoted as saying that the way to succeed in the record business is find a genius, hang on, and never let go. So that's another way.
Fantastic. And lastly, earlier on, your bit of advice to artists was don't chase your tail. I guess, what did you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, to simplify it, got to be, these things again are slightly obtuse and difficult and maybe even oblique. But by that I meant, so Artist A, does songs in a particular manner, and things are not going well. And somebody whispers in his ear, do the songs this way. So the person does them that way. Things still aren't going well. And then somebody else whispers in his ear, do it that way. And they do it that way. And, a year or two goes by, and they don't know who they are anymore. And then basically they are chasing their own tail at that point. They don't know who they are. You're better to, know what your strengths are, which is easier said than done. And stick to it. And, you can always fashion things a little. I'm not saying don't listen to people, but don't be deterred from your path so easily anyway. Yes. And that's what I meant by chasing your tail. Because otherwise you just end up going around to be more graphic, you end up going around in a circle. And, there's nothing worse than people that don't know what they are. But that's easy to end up in that state.
Very true. Well, thank you very much for giving me your time today,
My
Bernie.
pleasure.
It's a real
Thank
pleasure
you.
and an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.